Okay, hello people. Today we are going to talk about something very important, which is African American history. In this case, I had the opportunity to go to this place in 2018. It is Birmingham Civil Rights Institute in Alabama, and I took some pictures because I wanted to show this thing about African American history and how they have suffered and all the things that were related to uh, the racism and discrimination. As you see, the book that we are reading, which is To Kill a Mockingbird, talks a lot about racism and discrimination, and this is the perfect combination for this part. So as I said, I had the chance to take these pictures, and I will describe, because this is a museum in which they show everything that happened to African American people since the very beginning. I am talking about since the beginning of North American history, where we talk about Benjamin Franklin and all these people who were very important in the United States. Independence, but as you could see at the beginning with the tobacco companies from the three groups that arrived to America, they established basically that black people used to work for them. So slavery was legal by that time, and everything started from that with the people with the slaves that were brought from England or from all of these places to the United States. So let's start. Over here, we have, as I said, some pictures, and this is the city in which this takes place, or this is the city that everything is taking place in the pictures, and also in the museum. The museum is located in Birmingham, Alabama. And Birmingham, Alabama was one of the, let's say, biggest places where racism was really big, and people hated African American guys, right, a lot. So this is the place. This Baptist church was very important because they were having a service over there when the racist people, the white people, they threw some bombs over there in the entrance of this church. It was rebuilt, but that's why this church is very important. That's why I decided to put it over there. This is the place back over there, right? And this is also a park that is outside the museum. And this is the Palace of Revolution and Reconciliation Park. In this park, you will find a lot of, let's say, statues or things that show how the African American life was in the past. So we will start with this. I don't know if you can see this, but this part is, as I said, is very important, and those pictures are a very like vivid representations of what happened. In this one, in this picture over here, which is the police officer with the dog and the guy, the African American guy, this is how they treated the people that were in protests, in strikes. They shoot them with water, they shoot them with guns, and they also hit them with the dogs. The dogs were the ones who were biting them as well. Continuing with this, where you walk right through this hall over here, where you're walking through this hall, which is this is called the Freedom Walk. You will find all of these things. As you can see, you go and walk through this like hall where there are the dogs, and you feel like actually the dogs are gonna bite you, right? These guys are called the kneeling ministers. The kneeling ministers were a group of African American priests who were fighting against discrimination, and they were working with Martin Luther King Jr. So this is a statue of Martin Luther King Jr. in Washington D.C. There is a big statue, like a really big monument about this guy, and this is how the people were hit with guns, with water, right? As you can see in this part, you can see how they shoot them, and we will see some pictures about this when we are inside of the museum. As I said at the beginning, the Baptist church is over here. The picture that I showed at the beginning. There were these four little girls. They were playing outside the church where they sent a bomb, where the racist guys sent a bomb, and they were playing. In the park, there is also a statue making the representation of these little girls who were playing outside the church where the bomb exploded. So that is really hard to see, and it is really touchy to see. Inside, when you enter to this is the main entrance of the museum. All of these things around are basically the places that we are going to see. As soon as you are in the museum, you will find these things. People, first, we watch a documentary about the evolution of racism in the United States. This part, right, you will see this where the industry started to raise, they work in mines and etc. When the, let's say, the documentary finishes, you actually go and watch the curtain raises, and you will see this part. And this is called, guys, in English, in the United States, it was called segregation. As you can see, we have two things over here for drinking water. This one is for white people, and this one is for colored people, and I will explain this a little bit later. So one more time, segregation. What is segregation? Segregation means that there were specific places for colored people and there were specific places for white people. So as you could see in this picture, they used to work in mines, only the black people, and even the barber shops. There were, as you can see, this one says barber shop for white customers only, and this is the barber shop for colored people, and also some other pictures that show this. And when we are talking about barber shops, in this case in segregation, I want to make emphasis in the part that says, that say colored over here, colored people. So it didn't mean only black people, it could mean like in this case like Latin American people. It meant to Chinese people, Indian people, and people from India, and etc. That's why they didn't say black, because color was people from other races and countries. And that is segregation. There were specific places for white people, and there were specific places for African American people and other people as well. And also the buses, as you can see here, the buses and all things were separated, talking about segregation, right? White and color, right? And the bus over here, this is an example of a bus. The first seat was only for black people or colored people, and the other seats, the rest of the bus was for the white people. In the case of the schools, as you could see here in these two pictures, we have the black freedom and the white classroom, the black classroom and the white classroom. The two pictures are from the same year, 1953. And as you could see, the white classroom was really beautiful and clean and nice, also with technology, let's say this way. And then the African American classroom was really all ugly and basic. So we didn't have more things. I don't know if you can check the pictures over here. We have the founding fathers in the pictures, and here we have pictures of African American reference. So that is also a difficult thing to talk about. So continuing with the next part, we will see some other pictures over here, and this is how the buses, as I said, were distributed. Just the first seat was for African American people or colored people, and the rest of the seats they were for white people. And the justice system was really ugly also, because most African American people who went to the judgments, they lost it, and everything was like uh, bad for them because most of them died. As you can see, those are books. These ones are books for African American people, or for a black teacher, I'm sorry, and these are for the white teachers. Even right for teaching, if I, in my case, like I am an Latin American teacher, I will be in these parts. These were my books, and if you were a white guy, these were your books, right? So that was kind of, let's say, horrible in this part. So as you can see also in this statistics, 73% of black people work in laborers, and just 32% of white males working as a laborers. So as you could see, the most difficult jobs were also for black people as well. And this is something really difficult and like a difficult topic to talk about. This one, the majority of cartoons and things were about African American people. They were about mocking about them. They were like monkeys and all those things, and that was funny for them according to the white people, but African American people didn't like it. And also, we're gonna talk about this thing, which is the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan. This was a group of white people, racist white people who liked to kill African American persons. And as you can see, this is how they used to wear, and this is a picture of an execution of a black guy. And they just killed them by having fun. I mean, they didn't have any argument about doing this. They just hated African American people and they just killed them. So the Ku Klux Klan is something really horrible as well from, let's say, from African American history. And then we have a very important reference from African American history. And this woman was called Rosa Parks. In the buses here in Santa Ana, there are some buses from Ruta 55 in which you can find some like stickers that says in memory to Rosa Parks, because Rosa Parks was one African American woman who, uh, let's say, she didn't follow the rules about sitting in a place for black people. Was she said that sitting in a place for black people was correct. So in this case, the story says that Rosa Parks, she was really tired after working so many hours in her job, and when she entered to the bus, she saw that there was no space for black people because the space for black people was full. So she decided to sit down in a seat, let's say, for white people, and that's why this is her statue over here. And that happened in December in 1956. So this girl, right, she decided to do this, and because of that, she was sent to jail because she didn't follow the rules, and people even were humiliating her in the bus, and she didn't move until the police got and they took her to jail. So Rosa Parks was the very beginning of the African American movement in the United States. So that's why she's very famous and she's a very important reference. There is also another group of people that was very, let's say, important in North Carolina. These guys that you can see over here, they entered to a bar in which only white men could be there. So they decided to sit down there and they didn't move for a long time. They were people from the university and they didn't move. And then that was called the sit-in movement. And the city movement was that these guys, they were in the bar and they didn't move. The police arrived and they took them to jail, but they started to grow some movement in the United States in which African American people were fighting for their rights. After that, there was another movement that was called the Bus Ride to Freedom. And from this time, there were a lot of people who were in favor to African American guys, and they want them to have the same rights. So as you can see in this picture over here, this bus was attacked, and they sent the white guys. They sent a bomb to the bus in which there were African American people and white people in the bus ride to freedom. In this case over here. Basically, the purpose for this movement of people was to have like a trip from the most iconical places of the United States. I don't know if you can see over here. We have Washington, D.C., Richmond, Charlotte, Columbia, Atlanta, Montgomery, Birmingham, and Jacksonville. So this was like the route this Bus to Freedom took. And I don't know if you remember the first classes that we have about North American literature, and these are the places where the colonists arrived. So it means that all of this part was full of slaves and African American people. And that's why they decided to make the movement from here to here. I'm sorry, from Jackson until Washington, D.C., where Martin Luther King was going to give his speech about I Have a Dream. So they started in Jackson, Birmingham, and etc. until they go to basically Washington, D.C. But they were bombarded, right? They received a bomb, and most of them died, and they were injured as well. So this is important. Then after that, Martin Luther King was an important reference. So as you could see, Martin Luther King was not like the biggest one. There were other people who worked, right, like the kneeling ministers, Rosa Parks, the sitting movement, and many other people who worked for freedom in the United States. So Martin Luther King was a very important reference, and he was even sent to jail for being a political activist. And the people, I don't know if you remember the picture from the park. This is basically the reference that we have in this case, where the people were in protest in the street, and the police officers they just sent the dogs to attack these people. That was cruel, but that is the way in which they could, like, let's say, stop these persons, right? And then this is basically how everything finishes about uh, African American history. And we have here I Have a Dream, right? Here is where everything started to change, where Martin Luther King made his biggest speech in Washington, D.C., in the capital of the United States. I don't know if you can see the picture, but there were not only African American people in this part, there were also white people over here who were like supporting Martin Luther King in the movement of African American persons. So after that, of course, there were many things, many problems, and still now in these days there is discrimination, racism, and all of these things in the United States. But let's say that this was the very beginning. Now African American people can live a little bit better, and a lot better from the beginning of the story. So what I want you to do with this presentation is I want you to please take a look of the timeline that we had at the very beginning with the colonists when they arrived with slaves, and how these slaves suffered through all these years, all these hundreds of years until now, until having freedom and for having the same rights of white people. So basically, that is a little bit about African American history, people. I hope that you like the story, and this is important to like say to link this story, this part of the story, with the book that we are reading, which is To Kill a Mockingbird. So have a nice day. Take care.